Exercise Theory Chapter 1, Health-Related Benefits of Physical Activity. First, we need to examine the difference between physical activity and exercise. We use these two terms frequently, and it's important to understand what exactly they mean. Physical activity would be movements that are part of your daily life. So any kind of movement, any kind of activity. This could be things such as playing with the kids. It could be walking around getting groceries. It could be walking and working at the work location. So if you have a physical job, it could be climbing stairs. It could be anything. It can also be exercise, because exercise is a form of physical activity. However, it is a planned, structured form of physical activity. So it's something that you've intended to do in advance, that you are now officially exercising, so it's planned and structured. And we do it to improve at least one of the aspects of physical fitness, such as strength or flexibility or aerobic endurance. So it is planned accordingly. So, if you're doing exercise for flexibility, it would look very different than exercise done for strength. More and more we're becoming concerned with the consequences of sedentary behavior. So sedentary behavior is simply behavior where you're just sitting. You're sitting, you are being inactive. There are a lot of studies coming out showing that the effects of sedentary behavior are larger than we ever dreamt that they would be. That we have a society that, because we require less and less movement to accomplish days of activities of daily living, that we are becoming more and more sedentary. Years ago, we'd have to get up and go do work on the farm, or have to walk to work, or have to walk around doing dishes, doing housework. Now, as technology improves, so does our sedentary behavior. It increases dramatically with time. So it's important to be aware that there are specific consequences to the sedentary behavior. So by sitting down too much, we now know that we have an increased risk of coronary heart disease, an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. That's the insulin-resistant diabetes, the one that people tend to obtain due to dietary factors. That with sedentary behavior, you have an increase of premature mortality. That's increased risk of early death. That your body composition will be more unfavorable. So we'll carry more body fat, which has health consequences, and less lean tissue. That you have a risk of high blood glucose levels. That's high blood sugar levels, and that's what connects to the type 2 diabetes, at high blood sugar levels. That with sedentary behavior, your self-esteem is decreased, and academic achievement is also diminished. Studies are starting to come out to say that going to the gym for an hour a day is not enough to combat the effects of sedentary behavior. So the fact that we wake up in the morning, we sit down, we drive to work, when we arrive at work, we sit down all day, then we come home, we do an hour workout, and then we sit in front of the TV all day. What some new research is showing is that that hour workout is not even enough now to combat the fact that you sat for the rest of the day. So as a fitness leader, your goal is not just to create planned, structured exercise, which has an absolute huge role in the focus of this course, but I want to really stress to you that you need to decrease sedentary behavior so that you're recommending ways of making your participants more active. So perhaps it looks like in the morning they get up and take the dog for a short 10-minute walk. That when they get to work, they park farther away and they walk in farther and take the stairs. Or perhaps you recommend that on their hour lunch break, instead of sitting for the entire hour, that they use 15 minutes of it to walk. And in the evening, you have them actively participate in activity with their children, with their friends, etc. This is what we have to do to get rid of all the sedentary behavior, because the health consequences are far, far-reaching. We've already mentioned that physical activity is movement generated by the body. So by definition, it's any movement produced by the skeletal muscles and resulting in a substantial increase over resting energy. So it can be occupational. So if you have a job that requires you to be physically active, perhaps you're a server at a restaurant, perhaps you're a firefighter, perhaps a police officer, any job that requires you to move so you can get physical activity from your occupation. Also, there can be household tasks such as vacuuming, sweeping, moving around to do the laundry, or it could be yard work as well. So perhaps if you're mowing the lawn or shoveling the walk, this can all be forms of physical activity. It could also be what you do in your leisure time. So this can be sports. This could be leisure activities. So perhaps you go lawn bowling, perhaps you go bike riding with a friend, and perhaps these are things you might not consider as exercise, but rather leisure activities. And other things, this could be going for walks periodically or taking the stairs. Anything to get you moving more than you normally would have. So these others, in my opinion, this is the key things to look for in people's lives. Where can we add a little bit more physical activity where they might not even perceive it, but will make a difference? So that example of taking the stairs. Maybe it's walking to the store if they live close enough. Maybe it is simply standing up more. Maybe it's a point that if they're watching TV on commercial breaks, they always stand up out of their chair, do a couple quick stretches, and sit back down. I really like to make it as painless and quick as possible because these are things that we want people to adapt long-term into their life. So that's physical activity. Physical fitness is a little bit different. So physical fitness is bigger than physical activity. It's now the ability to carry out tasks without undue fatigue, which means that you are able to be physically active without becoming overly tired, so that when you do walk to the store, that you're not gasping for breath. That would be a level of physical fitness, and it's a continuum. We can become more or less physically fit, and there's levels of that. Physical fitness is really the outcome of our physical activity and exercise programs that we participate in. We're going to be talking throughout this course of the 5 different components of physical fitness. The first component is cardiovascular exercise, or aerobic endurance. This is actually your ability, by definition, it's your ability for your oxygen to take in and use oxygen to perform activities. And so these activities then will improve that function of your heart, your lungs, and your circulatory system, because all 3 things will work at getting more oxygen to your working muscles. So for cardiovascular endurance, these are activities that use large muscle groups. These are repetitive, ongoing activities. So when you think about cardiovascular endurance, you're thinking of activities such as biking, running, swimming, skiing, aerobic style classes, so kickboxing classes, step aerobics, high-low aerobic classes. And actually I mentioned running, but walking as well. It would be a lower intensity form of physical activity. But these are all things that will improve cardiovascular endurance. They will make your body more efficient at getting oxygen to your working muscles, which as a result will improve the function of your heart, your lungs, and your circulatory system. The next component is muscle strength. So how strong a muscle is, and we define this by the most weight that a muscle can move in a single effort, how strong you are. This is contrasted with muscle endurance, which is the ability of a muscle to perform effort repeatedly over time. So muscle strength is to do it one time. Muscle endurance is to perform that work repeatedly over time. So for example, muscle endurance, the sport I always think for muscle endurance is rowing. So you're working against a resistance repeatedly. Muscular strength, that would be more like 1 rep max. Flexibility is a range of motion at a particular joint. So how much movement can be generated at that joint. Each joint will have its own unique range of motion because of the amount of muscles, bones, ligaments at that joint space. So we will talk specifically about flexibility later, but it can be limited and controlled by the shape of the joint itself. And I always think of the elbow joint on this one because you can only straighten your elbow so far. But flexibility is also controlled and limited by ligaments at that joint space and muscle and soft tissue. The final component of physical fitness is body composition. So what your body is made up of. And when we think of body composition, we think of fat mass versus fat-free mass. So fat-free mass being your organs, your bones, your muscle. So fat mass versus fat-free mass. And we will talk later about creating a healthy balance between the two. So what are the health-related and performance-related components of physical fitness? So physical fitness is a measurable outcome of physical activity or exercise. We've already said that. And these measurable outcomes can be categorized into either health-related results or performance-related results. Health-related fitness is the ability to carry out daily tasks with vigor and alertness without undue fatigue and with ample energy to enjoy leisure time pursuit and to meet unforeseen emergencies. So you're having health benefits to your activity and you are able to live your life comfortably so that you're not gasping for air when you have to take the stairs, that your legs are not burning when you need to walk down the street, that you have enough fitness to be able to accomplish these goals. They've created Canadian physical activity guidelines for Canadians, and these guidelines are broken down into different age categories. And these guidelines were made for health benefits associated with physical activity and exercise. So we'll talk about those in just a moment, but it's important to notice that they are health benefits, not fitness benefits of physical activity. Performance-related fitness, in contrast, would be linked to specific sport or job-related skills. So if you are a firefighter, we do physical testing for firefighters to make sure that they're good physical condition for their jobs. This type of testing will carry on to many different professions that will require a base level of physical fitness, as well as you could also look at this in sports. So we could take a look at cyclists and performing time trials. We could take athletes and test their VO2 max. Other athletes, we could test their 1 rep max, or their amount of strength, or the amount of flexibility. And these would be done for performance-related fitness. So we mentioned the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines. These are guidelines that were established to be able to obtain health benefits. So right in front of you here, you actually have the benefits for youth, but I'm going to give you the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines for adults, which are ages 18 to 64. So what's recommended for adults is that you accumulate 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. Your accumulation of these 150 minutes can be in bouts of 10 minutes or more. So this is what we want to structure for cardiovascular activity, 150 minutes per week in bouts of 10 minutes or more, and your intensity level is moderate to vigorous. You also want to include bone strengthening activities 2 days per week. Now these numbers might not seem very high to some of you, and they aren't. These are not high enough to get fitness related benefits from the activity, so you won't get much improvement in VO2 max scores or 1 rep max testing, etc. These are for health benefits, and this is the absolute minimum requirement for health benefits. In the physical activity guidelines, they will note that more is better. So if you go beyond 150 minutes, then all of a sudden you will start seeing body composition changes, and you will start to see these fitness-related benefits to your activity. Now, in noting that doesn't seem like very much, You should also be aware that 15% of all Canadians meet that minimum. That's quite shocking. 15% of adult Canadians meet that minimum. So that's saying that 85% do not. Your goal as a fitness leader is to find that 85% that are not making these base minimums and find ways to make them more physically active. Find ways to find bouts of 10 minutes or more of activity. So that all of a sudden can be that morning walk or that lunchtime walk. Find ways to decrease that sedentary behavior. Because there are huge benefits associated with physical activity. So it's improved physical and mental health. Your quality of life and well-being will increase. Sleep quality will increase. In fact, they're looking at that a lot with children right now, that because our children are less physically active, they're not sleeping as well anymore. And so because they're not sleeping as well anymore, they're becoming more tired during the day and less inclined to be physically active. So it's almost a vicious cycle. That being physical activity, if you hit certain amounts of it, you will see an improvement in your aerobic fitness. So your cardiovascular endurance, you'll see an improvement in. Our body composition will see an improvement in. So we'll increase our non-fat tissue, such as our muscle, and decrease the body fat levels. Improve and increased mood. Your neuromuscular awareness will improve, so that will help things such as your balance. They've had studies showing that academic performance improves with physical activity. Our immune system will improve, so it'll make us healthier. Our bone and muscle strength will improve. What's really important to noticing is that the bone strength improves. As we age, we usually lose mineralization of our bones, so our bones become thinner and more brittle, which can lead to fractures. By increasing our bone strength and making our bones stronger, we are less likely to experience a fracture. Our life expectancy as well can improve, and our balance, and this will be because of our neuromuscular awareness. Other benefits will be decreases in certain things. So decrease in the risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease and diabetes. A decrease in hypertension. So hypertension is high blood pressure. So physical activity will improve our blood pressure. Cholesterol levels can decrease with physical activity. Our blood glucose levels. So blood glucose, again, is sugar. So our blood sugar levels will decrease, and a decrease in blood sugar levels will be a decrease in your risk for type 2 diabetes. Also decrease will be the rates of obesity. Stress levels decrease with physical activity. Our need for medication will decrease. I shall point out that that is outside of your scope to decrease someone's medication. However, as you help someone become more physically active, their medical doctor will probably find that there is less of a need for their medication, and the medical doctor, in turn, will decrease the medications. There's also decreased risk of functional limitations, so meaning that they're more functionally able, and this is extremely important as we age. So if you become functionally limited, so unable to do a squat, that's going to make you unable to sit down and stand up on your own, and that's going to increase the chances of you ending up in assisted living. It's also going to decrease your risk of fractures and falls. So your falls will be decreased by your improved balance and neuromuscular awareness. If you fall less, you're less likely to fracture a bone, or if you do happen to fall, if you have increased bone strength from physical activity, you're less likely to fracture. And all of these things combined, all of these decreases, will decrease healthcare costs. So we've mentioned sedentary behavior. It's important to note that actually we have specific guidelines now for youth, and truthfully that saddens me. I feel like children naturally want to be physically active, and I feel that perhaps nowadays we're not giving them enough opportunity to be physically active. So what we recommend now is cutting down on having children sitting. We want to make sure that they take that sedentary time that they used to have and replace it with active time. So in the mornings we wake up, instead of driving our children to school, it's recommended that we have them participate in active transportation. So either biking to school, walking with friends, or perhaps you organize groups in your community where perhaps parents will take turns. If the children are young enough, parents will take turns walking the students to and from school. Participation had funding, and they've looked into this. Your child's more likely to be involved in a motor vehicle accident in the car than they are outside of the car. So really get them walking, get them moving, get them biking. They will have school, and it's always recommendations are being made to schools now about keeping the kids physically active, a special recess time, etc. However, we're trying to talk about what parents can do. So we'll scoot to after school. After school, it's recommended active play. Most importantly, getting the kids outside. They know that if they are outside, that they're more likely to be physically active than if they are indoors. So turn off the televisions, turn off the computers, limit screen time. Get children outside after school so that they can move around more, run more. Then it's recommended to have structured physical activity, in which Canadians actually do quite well with. We're very good at keeping our children physically active in sports, etc. So you'd have that. And then after that physical activity, our leisure time, once again, we want to make sure we're encouraging movement with the family, with friends. So maybe we're taking the dog for a walk. Maybe we're going for a bike ride. Maybe we're outside playing catch. Make the leisure fun time active time as opposed to indoor television time. Really limit the screen time. And then after that is bedtime. Our plan is that if the children are more physically active during the day, they're going to be tired at night, they'll have a better quality sleep, and they'll wake up refreshed the next morning. There are certain lifestyle risk factors, so things that put us at a greater risk for disease or issues later in life. These risk factors can be unmodifiable, meaning we don't have any control over them, or they can be modifiable. So our unmodifiable risk factors are things such as age. So as we get older, we tend to be more predisposed to certain diseases. And quite honestly, especially with different types of cancer, etc., there are certain age ranges that have higher risk factors. Also unmodifiable is our gender. So once again, men or women can be predisposed to certain types of diseases. We could also have a genetic predisposition. So perhaps we carry specific genes for diseases, and you'll find that this is found in different genetic groups as well. So different groupings of individuals stand a higher risk. Just because you have a genetic predisposition of a disease does not mean that those diseases will always happen. So you might be genetically predisposed to certain types of cancer. It might run in the family. But that does not mean that you are guaranteed to get that disease. But you might have a higher risk compared to other people. Also unmodifiable can be environmental influences, so things such as smog and toxins in the environment that we have no control over, as well as our medical history. So if you've had heart disease in the past, if you've had cancers in the past, those are unmodifiable. We can't change the past. But there are a lot of modifiable ones. So whereas our genetic predisposition and our age and gender and medical history are all set, we could still have some control over some factors. So smoking is a huge risk factor. So that if you opt to not smoke, you can reduce the risk of many, many diseases. Physical activity. You can control how physically active you are. And there are large health benefits with being more physically active. We've already spoken of them. And they talk about physical activity as being almost the new smoking, in the sense that if we are not physically active, the health risks with physical inactivity are huge. We also have control over our diet. And although we might not always have the finances to buy the best quality of everything, we could still make healthier choices. So we have control over that. We've listed stress as a modifiable risk factor, and some people argue and go, well, it's not. I have no control how stressful my life is. True, that's true. You can't control how stressful your life is. What you can control is how you react to that stress. So they do use relaxation techniques. Some people use yoga. Some people do breathing techniques. How you handle your stress is modifiable. Alcohol intake is modifiable, as are personal safety habits. This is one that's frequently ignored, but really, wearing a helmet when biking, it decreases the risks of injuries from biking. Wearing a seatbelt when in a car decreases risks. Really encourage your participants to focus on these modifiable ones, because we can't do anything about the unmodifiable, and not to always assume that genetic predispositions are going to end up a reality. So yes, you might have a higher risk for certain diseases, but you can make a lot of changes in your life that may in turn decrease that risk. We do have general recommendations to improve health outcomes in Canada. So we can promote active transportation, biking, walking more, going to the grocery store by foot, parking farther away, taking the stairs, really being active throughout the day. We also want to promote healthy weight, and this will be done through healthy eating and physical activity. We're going to take a moment to mention pedometers. Pedometers are a great tool to use. Health Canada will recommend 10,000 steps for Canadians, which equal 8 kilometers or 5 miles, and it's recommended that you get 10,000 steps daily. This is a huge learning tool. I found that a lot of individuals that insist that they're physically active will wear a lifestyle tracker or pedometer and are shocked by how inactive they actually are. I also find it works to be very motivating. So for myself, when I've used pedometers or lifestyle trackers, on days that I end up not being that physically active, I find myself all of a sudden it'll be 7:30 at night and I'll look at my step count and go, ooh, better go outside, take the dog for a walk. And it reminds me to move more. It reminds me on the more sedentary days that I need to get up and add something else. We have some general recommendations for those using pedometers, that you want to make sure you clip it on your waistband or belt just above your dominant knee, because you're more likely to take steps from that side. And you can actually test that. So you just clip that on there, you set it to 0, you take 20 steps, count the steps, and then you stop and check your number. And it'll let you know how accurate it is. If you're finding that it's not counting very well, you might find that repositioning it just a little bit will make a difference. So pedometers have modernized a lot, and these have become our lifestyle trackers. So these are things such as Fitbits or VivoFits. There's a whole slew of them out there now. And these can count more than just steps. So it can track the number of steps that you take, but it can also keep track of your sleep, how many minutes during the day you were active, as well as your daily calorie intake. It's often used to motivate people to move more. Like the example I said, that when I found that I'd have days that I wasn't moving much, I'd look at my numbers and go, oh my goodness, I got to get moving. I got to do something else. Some of them will actually buzz to let you know if you've been inactive for too long. So if you've been sitting down a lot, they'll actually vibrate or buzz just to let you know that you need to get up and get moving. And some of them can be motivating, that you could post your statistics to websites. Some of them will let you post to Facebook, etc., or to an app. There are certain ones that let you compete with your friends over how active you are. So it can be a lot of fun. Or else you can just look it up privately and know for yourself how well you're doing. Is physical activity safe for everyone? Yes, it is. We can become more physically active. Some individuals might not be able to exercise without proper supervision, so there might be people that require certified personal trainers for formal exercise, but we can all become more physically active. So let's just remember the difference between physical activity, exercise, and physical fitness. So physical activity is going to be any type of movement that is done by the body. Exercise is a form of physical activity that is structured and planned, and it's structured and planned to improve one of the components of fitness, such as cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, or body composition. And finally, the last one to define is physical fitness. So this is going to be the ability to participate in activities without undue fatigue. What are the physical activity guidelines for Canadian adult? It's 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week in bouts of 10 minutes or more. And you should also include at minimum of 2 sessions of bone strengthening exercises per week. It is noted that the more minutes that you accumulate, the more health benefits you will achieve. And finally, modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors of disease. The modifiable ones would be things such as smoking, physical activity, our diet, how we handle stress, alcohol intake, and safety habits. Our non-modifiable risk factors are risk factors we don't have control over, such as age, gender, genetic predisposition, the environment in which we're in, as well as our medical history.